Blue and red lights slashed through the night, painting the rain-slick asphalt in frantic color. Aisha Daniels' hands froze on the steering wheel, knuckles whitening beneath the glow of her dashboard. The siren cut, leaving only the hiss of rain against metal. "Step out of the car," a voice barked. Male, sharp, no greeting, no explanation. Her pulse quickened. She'd signaled. She'd obeyed every traffic law. The officer's flashlight sliced through the window like interrogation light. She rolled it down, cold air flooding her lungs. License and registration. She reached slowly, deliberate, aware of the space between her movements, aware of how he leaned closer with each inch she moved. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he snapped. Her fingers trembled, hovering mid-air. "They're right here." The beam of light rose to her face. "You live around here?" "Yes, officer." "I answer the question." The words tasted like rust. The rain grew louder, drumming against the roof. He gestured toward the back seat. At her briefcase, her court documents still half open. His jaw twitched. "What's this?" "My work," he sneered. "You a lawyer or something?" Her throat tightened. "Something like that." The pause that followed was long enough for thunder to roll in behind it. Then came the line that would replay in her mind for weeks. "People like you shouldn't drive cars like this." The flashlight dropped. The click of the holster echoed through the storm. Aisha's heart stopped mid-beat. She opened her mouth to speak, and the world exploded in white light. Freeze frame. Breathless. The night. Waiting to decide what she would become. The rain was relentless, hammering against the windshield like an argument she couldn't win. Aisha's eyes flicked between the mirror and the speedometer. Steady, lawful, measured. Then the blue lights ignited behind her. She pulled over, heart sinking to the strobe. The officer approached with deliberate slowness, one hand on his belt, the other gripping a flashlight that cut through the storm like authority embodied. His nameplate caught the beam. Cole. License and registration. His tone wasn't a request. Aisha's fingers moved carefully, slow enough for him to see. "They're in my bag. Keep your hands visible." She froze mid-motion. "Okay." He leaned closer, eyes scanning the interior, suit jacket folded on the seat, courthouse ID lanyard visible. His brow furrowed. "You coming from work?" "Yes. What do you do?" She hesitated. "Legal field. Legal field?" He repeated it like a challenge. "That's supposed to mean something?" Rainwater dripped from his cap. The smell of wet asphalt filled the air, thick and metallic. She handed over her ID. His eyes darted to her photo, then back to her face, like he was searching for the flaw that justified his suspicion. "You know why I pulled you over?" "No, officer." "You didn't signal back there." She had. The signal light was still warm under her thumb, but she stayed silent. He circled the car once, tapping the taillight, the trunk, inspecting nothing with great purpose. "Step out." She did, slowly. The rain seeped into her shoes, hands on the hood. "Is this really necessary?" His jaw tightened. "Are you resisting instruction?" The phrase landed heavy, the kind that always justified escalation. "No." He patted her down, his motions rougher than protocol. Her pulse pounded behind her ribs, but her expression stayed calm. Years of composure distilled into one survival tactic: control your breath. A car passed. The driver slowed, eyes wide, phone lifted to record. Then another. The air shifted. Witnesses, but distant, useless. Cole opened her passenger door without asking. Papers spilled onto the seat. Briefs, signatures, legal documents marked Daniels versus City of Crestview. He picked one up, scanning the header. "This yours?" "Yes." He stared at her again, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Daniels. That name's supposed to mean something?" "Only to me," he snorted. "You people and your attitudes." Lightning cracked. The sound that followed was closer to silence than thunder, her mind sealing itself shut. Backup arrived. 2 more officers. 1 young, 1 old. The older one squinted at her ID. Then his face drained. "Cole," he said quietly, "you need to stop." Cole frowned. "What?" He leaned in, whispering something low, fast. Cole's eyes widened, disbelief flickering before it hardened into denial. "You're kidding." The older officer shook his head. "She's Judge Daniels' daughter." For a moment, everything stilled, and the rain, the lights, even the breath between them. Cole looked at her again. Really looked. like the world had shifted under him. Aisha met his gaze, unblinking, steady, the kind that promised consequences he couldn't yet name. Then someone's radio crackled, breaking the spell. Cole stepped back, muttering something sharp. Unreadable. "Uncuff her," the older officer said. Cole didn't move. The silence stretched thin, tight enough to tear. Aisha's wrists ached, but her voice was even. "I'd like my lawyer now." Cole flinched at the word lawyer. The night swallowed the sound, leaving only rain and restraint. The fluorescent light in the station buzzed like an irritated fly. Aisha sat on the hard plastic chair, wrists still red from the cuffs. Her coat hung damp and heavy around her shoulders, the rainwater dripping onto the tiled floor in slow, rhythmic drops. The officers whispered across the room. Low, frantic, the way people do when they've just realized they've made a mistake too public to bury. Derek Cole stood near the intake desk, hands braced against the counter, jaw locked. His partner from the stop, Officer Grant, the older one, kept his voice low. "You crossed a line tonight, Derek." Cole didn't look at him. She was resisting instruction. She wasn't. She had an attitude. Grant's sigh cut through the air. "She's the daughter of Judge Leonard Daniels." That name hung in the air like a loaded gun. Cole's lips parted. Surprise, disbelief, then something darker. "That's supposed to scare me?" "It should," Grant said. "You just arrested a federal judge's kid on a made-up charge. You searched her car. You touched her. You're finished." Cole laughed, but it was hollow, nervous. If she's his daughter, why didn't she say it? Grant shook his head. She didn't have to. Across the room, Aisha sat still, listening. The voices carried just enough. She'd said nothing since the arrest. Not a protest, not a word of defense. Silence was power here. Every word she spoke would be catalogued, twisted, and she knew it. A young officer approached her with a clipboard. "Ms. Daniels, we're, just processing paperwork. Am I being charged?" Her voice was low, even. He looked uncomfortable. "Not at this time." "Then I'm free to go." "Ma'am, the lieutenant's coming down." "I said," she repeated, each word deliberate, "am I being charged?" He faltered. "No, then I'm leaving." Cole turned. "Sit back down." Aisha met his stare, and something in the air shifted again. Authority collided with recognition, the kind that reminded him he was no longer the one in control. Grant moved between them. Cole let it go, but Cole stepped forward. "You think your name makes you untouchable?" She didn't answer. "Answer me," he said, louder now. Her father's voice echoed in her head. "Never argue power when it's breaking itself." She stood slowly, rainwater still dripping from her sleeve. "You touched me without cause. You detained me without reason. And you spoke words I'll never forget." Cole's face hardened. "You threatening me?" She looked at him like she was looking through him. "No, I'm remembering." Two officers flanked her instinctively, but Grant raised a hand. "Let her go." The room fell silent as she walked toward the exit. The sound of her heels on the tile, sharp, measured, filled the space that no one dared speak into. At the doorway, a man appeared, late 50s, tailored coat, rain clinging to his gray hair. Judge Leonard Daniels. His presence alone bent the room. Every officer straightened without being told. He looked at his daughter first, the faint red marks on her wrists, the damp collar, then at Cole. "Officer," he said evenly, "which of you made the arrest?" Cole swallowed. "I did, sir." "On what grounds?" "Failure to signal." Leonard's voice was calm, surgical. "Did she fail to signal?" Cole hesitated. Grant stepped forward. "No, sir." "She didn't." Cole's jaw tightened. She looked suspicious. Suspicious. Leonard repeated the word like it was evidence. "Because she was driving?" "Because she—" Cole stopped himself. Leonard didn't blink. "Finish that sentence." Cole said nothing. Leonard turned to the desk sergeant. "Release my daughter immediately, and preserve all body cam footage from every officer involved." "Yes, Your Honor." Leonard placed a hand on Aisha's shoulder. Brief, grounding. "Come with me." As they stepped into the cold, the silence outside was thicker than the rain. Reporters hadn't arrived yet. No flashing cameras, no protests, just the sound of a city asleep while injustice worked the night shift. In the car, Leonard finally spoke. "You okay?" I will be. He looked at her. You didn't tell them who you were. I wanted to see how far they'd go. He nodded once, proud and furious in equal measure. Now you've seen. Aisha stared out the window, the lights blurring into long, wet streaks of color. It's not just one man, Dad. It's the whole structure holding him up. Leonard's hands tightened on the wheel. Then we'll take it apart piece by piece. Behind them, at the precinct, Derek Cole stood by the intake desk watching the taillights vanish into the rain. Grant exhaled slowly. You're in deep now, Derek. Cole's eyes flickered, that small seed of fear taking root. She's not going to win this. Grant shook his head. She doesn't have to. The footage already did. Cole turned away, jaw clenched, muttering to himself. We'll see. The storm outside began to ease, but inside the station the air stayed electric, a hum of dread waiting for daylight. Morning came gray and heavy, the kind of light that made the world look hungover. The city of Crestview woke to headlines it hadn't prepared for. Judge's daughter wrongfully detained in late-night traffic stop. By 8:00 a.m., the precinct phones were ringing nonstop. The chief's office door stayed closed, the blinds drawn. Derek Cole sat in the waiting area outside, uniform pressed, eyes red. Every whisper that passed by was a knife. You hear what happened? That was her? Judge Daniels' daughter? He clenched his jaw, fighting the nausea twisting in his gut. He'd done worse stops before, gotten away with worse words. But this one had teeth. Media teeth, political teeth. The door opened. Chief Marianne Lowell stood framed in the light from her office, her expression carved from stone. Inside, now. Cole followed, the carpet swallowing his footsteps. Lowell sat behind her desk, fingers steepled. A stack of printed screenshots lay in front of her. Social media posts, news headlines, stills from his body cam footage frozen mid-frame. Do you have any idea what kind of storm you've created? She said. I followed procedure. Procedure doesn't include slurs. I didn't. She turned the screen toward him. The video was paused at the exact moment his flashlight illuminated Aisha's face, his words captured clear as day. People like you shouldn't drive cars like this. The sound hit harder than he remembered saying it. Lowell leaned forward. You just handed the department's critics a gold mine. The mayor's office wants an explanation by noon. The union's already drafting statements. And the judge? He's coming for your badge. Cole's throat went dry. You can't just throw me under the bus. I'm trying to save what's left of this department, he laughed, sharp and bitter. By hanging me out? You made yourself the rope. Outside the office, Grant stood silently by the hallway wall, listening to the muffled argument. He'd seen this play out before, not with headlines this loud, but with the same pattern. The department closing ranks, rewriting facts, burying the truth until it rotted beneath paperwork. Isha sat in her apartment, the TV muted, the news ticker scrolling her name like it belonged to public property. She had her laptop open, replaying the footage she'd obtained from her attorney. The video was shaky, grainy, filmed by a bystander, but the audio was unmistakable. She paused it right before his voice hit the screen. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. She could release the full clip herself or let it leak. Both paths burned. Her phone rang. Dad? Leonard's tone was clipped. Internal Affairs called. They're opening an investigation. It's going to be a circus, I know. You'll need to stay out of it publicly. A pause. Publicly, she repeated. Yes, they'll twist anything you say. She nodded to herself. Then I'll speak another way. At City Hall, Lowell faced a semicircle of reporters. Cameras clicked. The Crestview Police Department does not tolerate misconduct, she said evenly. We are conducting a full review. Has Officer Cole been suspended? Someone shouted. He has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Cole watched the press conference from the station's break room. Coffee untouched. Administrative leave, he muttered. Might as well say convicted. Grant walked in, set his hat on the table. You should get a lawyer. I didn't do anything wrong. Grant met his eyes. Then you shouldn't be afraid of evidence. The silence between them said everything else. By afternoon, Aisha's name had trended nationally. Hashtags, think pieces, cable pundits. The country wanted her outrage, her tears, her statement. But she stayed invisible. Her lawyer released a single sentence to the press. Ms. Daniels will pursue this matter through appropriate legal channels. Behind that silence, She was already gathering every detail: timestamps, dispatch logs, disciplinary records. She knew how systems worked. She'd studied their architecture in law school and watched her father navigate their cracks. But this time it wasn't theory. It was personal. That night, Leonard sat in his study, suit jacket draped over the chair. Aisha stood by the window, arms crossed. "They'll try to settle," he said. "I won't take it. You might not have a choice." "I do." He sighed. "You don't understand how deep this goes." She turned. "Then teach me." Her tone wasn't rebellion. It was readiness. The next morning, Cole's union rep arrived at the station, all smiles and rehearsed outrage. "We'll call it a misunderstanding. Miscommunication during high stress. The department will want to close this fast." Cole nodded, barely listening. Every word sounded like insulation against consequences. But in the quiet hours of that afternoon, a new story broke. A journalist from the Crestview Chronicle had received an anonymous email, an officer's internal memo marked "Confidential, Use of Force Review, D. Cole." The reporter's voice on the podcast was calm, surgical. "This isn't the first complaint filed against Officer Derek Cole. There have been 3 others, all closed without formal discipline." The story spread faster than the department could contain it. Chief Lowell's phone lit up with calls. Cole's union rep went silent. Grant stared at the report on his screen, jaw tight. And Aisha, sitting at her desk, the glow of her laptop reflected in her eyes, smiled for the first time since that night. Not in triumph, but in recognition. The cracks were showing. The system had started to eat its own. The video hit the internet at 6:42 a.m., a 2-minute clip filmed from across the street, shaky but clear enough to ruin reputations. Within an hour, it had been reposted thousands of times. By noon, Aisha Daniels' name sat at the top of every trending list. "People like you shouldn't drive cars like this." That single line played on repeat, in news montages, in comment sections over music remixes and activist threads. The line became a weapon, a mirror, a headline. Aisha watched it once. Only once. Then she closed her laptop and sat in silence, the sound of her own breathing louder than any broadcast. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, old classmates, civil rights organizations, even strangers offering solidarity or demanding comment. She ignored them all. The more she stayed quiet, the louder everyone else became. On the morning talk shows, pundits dissected her face frame by frame. "Notice how calm she looks," one host said. "Some say that calmness provoked him further," another replied. Why didn't she identify herself sooner? Why should she have to? Every question turned her restraint into spectacle. At the precinct, Cole scrolled through the footage on his phone in disbelief. "It's edited," he muttered. "They cut the parts that show she was—" He stopped, realizing there was nothing to claim she'd done. The raw footage, his own body cam, matched almost perfectly. Grant entered the room quietly. "They're saying Internal Affairs wants statements." Cole laughed without humor. "They'll sacrifice me to keep the chief clean." Grant didn't argue. "You gave them the line, Derek. There's no way back from that." Across town, Aisha sat with her father and her attorney in the living room. The TV stayed muted, the scroll of commentary running like a storm warning. Her attorney, a sharp-voiced woman named Renee Porter, laid out the strategy. "The department's doing an independent review. We both know that means controlled damage. If they can frame this as one man's mistake, the system survives intact." Leonard exhaled through his nose. "And if we push too hard, they'll paint us as vengeful." Aisha looked from one to the other. "So they win either way?" Renee met her gaze. "Not if you redefine winning." That night, crowds gathered outside Crestview Police Headquarters. Small at first, then growing. Handmade signs, umbrellas under cold drizzle, chants echoing off concrete. "Justice for Aisha Daniels. No more immunity." Someone had printed Cole's line on cardboard, bold black ink. "People like you shouldn't drive cars like this." The phrase had become a rallying cry. Inside, Chief Lowell watched from her office window. "We're losing control of the narrative," she said to her deputy. He adjusted his tie nervously. "We can issue another statement," she cut him off. "No more statements. Every word feeds the fire. Find something on her. Anything we can use to shift sympathy." The deputy hesitated. "Ma'am, she's clean." No priors, no misconduct, no social media scandals? Then find her attitude, Lowell snapped. Spin the professionalism into arrogance. Make people doubt her. By midnight, anonymous accounts were circulating half-truths. She was disrespectful. She escalated it. She wanted attention. Aisha read none of it. She was at her father's kitchen table, surrounded by files, reviewing body cam policies and complaint procedures. Each page revealed how easily departments buried accountability. Leonard poured coffee, silent for a long moment. They'll come after you next, I know. They'll call you angry. Then I'll speak calmly. They'll call you privileged. Then I'll remind them privilege doesn't stop. Bullets, he set the cup beside her. And if they come for me? She met his eyes. Then I remind them who taught me the law. The next morning, protesters filled downtown Crestview. Drone footage showed thousands of umbrellas moving like a tide. News anchors narrated over the roar. What began as a single stop has become a national conversation on race, power, and accountability. Inside the police station, Cole watched from behind glass. His own reflection merged with the crowd on the screen. They don't even know me, he muttered. Grant stood beside him. They know what you represent. Cole's fist tightened. I'm not their villain, Grant said quietly. You made yourself the line everyone remembers. That night, Aisha lay awake, the chant still faintly audible through the rain. She wasn't proud, not triumphant. The attention burned like light too close to skin. Her phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. Just one line. They're planning to bury this. Tomorrow. She stared at it, pulse steadying, decision forming. If they wanted quiet, she would answer with documentation. Morning talk shows had already chosen sides. The split-screen panels buzzed with opinion, strategy, and performance. On one side of the country, anchors repeated words like context and procedure. On the other, activists called it what it was. Racial profiling dressed as policy. Aisha didn't watch. She read transcripts instead, highlighting phrases like alleged misconduct and possible misunderstanding. Language she knew was where power hid best. Her father entered the room quietly. You've been up all night. Reading how they rewrite me before the story's even done? Leonard nodded. They'll try to turn your restraint into guilt. They already have. Outside, the city moved under new tension. Quiet streets, uneasy stares. Crestview's mayor issued a statement at 9 a.m. We must not rush to judgment. Officer Cole has served honorably for 10 years. The press release landed like poison. By noon, the department's union spokesperson appeared on television. This is a good officer under enormous pressure. We're asking the public to allow a fair investigation before destroying a man's career. They called it compassion. Aisha called it camouflage. Her phone buzzed. Renee Porter again. They're soft-launching the redemption arc, Renee said. He's the misunderstood cop, the overworked public servant. It's textbook. Let them talk, Aisha said. They're still reacting. What are you planning? I'm not planning. I'm documenting. At the station, Derek Cole rehearsed lines in front of the mirror. His lawyer coached from behind him. Stay calm, own a little remorse, but keep your pride, the lawyer said. They want a human, not a monster. Cole practiced his expression, regret without surrender. I never meant to disrespect anyone. It was a stressful situation. Good. Emphasize procedure. Don't apologize for intent, only perception. The lawyer smiled like a man guiding a guilty client toward public sympathy. We'll have you on the local news by tonight. The interview aired at 7 p.m. The lighting was soft, the tone conversational. Cole wore a pressed blue shirt, wedding ring visible, his voice rehearsed empathy. I've dedicated my life to serving this community, he said. That night I was trying to ensure safety. Things escalated faster than I anticipated. The interviewer leaned in. Do you think this has been blown out of proportion? Cole hesitated just long enough to seem thoughtful. I think people are hurting. I understand that. But not every mistake is a crime. By the next morning, comment sections had split again, half furious, half forgiving. Aisha sat at her father's dining table, scrolling through the transcript. Not every mistake is a crime, she repeated softly. Except when it is. Leonard looked up from his coffee. You know what they're doing? Yes, she said. They're building a narrative strong enough to absorb the truth. Renee called minutes later. We have to get ahead of this. The hearing's coming fast. If the department's allowed to shape public sentiment first, accountability dies in committee. Aisha leaned back. So we don't fight sentiment. We fight fact. How? With their own files. Renee's silence was answer enough. She understood. That evening, Aisha drafted a written statement. Short, precise, no adjectives. I am cooperating fully with the investigation. My focus remains on transparency, not retribution. The facts are recorded. They will speak for themselves. She sent it to Renee, who released it to the press. On television, commentators called it measured, composed, almost cold. Exactly as she intended. The department, meanwhile, scrambled. The chief convened a closed-door meeting with public relations consultants and the city attorney. We can't lose both the officer and the public, Lowell said. We need balance, the consultant smiled tightly. Balance means spectacle. Give them a hearing. Make it visible, procedural, tedious. Let outrage die in bureaucracy, the city attorney nodded. We'll call it a disciplinary review, not a trial. Good, Lowell said. We'll control the optics. But optics couldn't contain what came next. Late that night, an encrypted email landed in a journalist's inbox, this time from a verified city employee. Attached were internal memos detailing prior complaints against Cole, all labeled resolved. Attached also timestamps showing who signed each dismissal. At the top of the list, Chief Marianne Lowell. The journalist smiled grimly and started typing. When the story broke the next morning, the spin collapsed. Aisha's name appeared beside Cole's again, but this time, not as a victim or headline, as a force. Every commentator who'd called her too calm now called her calculated. Every voice that had demanded forgiveness now demanded reform. She read none of it. Her focus stayed on the documents glowing on her laptop, evidence not of one man's bias, but an institution's protection of it. The story was shifting. Finally, not around her, but because of her. The hearing room was all glass, steel, and silence, modern architecture pretending to mean transparency. Reporters filled the back rows. City officials sat forward, stiff-backed, all of them playing audience to a script no one wanted to read aloud. Aisha Daniels entered quietly, flanked by her attorney, Renee. Every head turned. Cameras clicked, not in chaos but in reverence, like she was both symbol and threat. At the other table sat Derek Cole. His uniform was gone, replaced by a dark suit that didn't quite fit. He looked smaller under the fluorescent light, the way guilt shrinks the body. The presiding officer, a gray-haired man with a practiced air of neutrality, cleared his throat. This disciplinary review is convened to evaluate Officer Derek Cole's conduct on the evening of March 14th. Proceedings are public. Testimonies are to be recorded. He nodded to Cole's lawyer. You may begin. Cole's lawyer stood, expression crafted for sympathy. My client has served honorably for 10 years. He made a procedural mistake under difficult conditions. He regrets his words that night, but intent and context matter. There was no criminal motive, the room murmured. Cameras flashed. Renee leaned toward Aisha, whispering, They're softening him, framing this as fatigue, not bias. I know, Aisha murmured back. They're hoping I react, but she didn't. She sat perfectly still, expression unreadable. Cole was called to speak. His hands trembled slightly as he took the oath. I never meant for any harm to come to Ms. Daniels, he said. It was dark, raining. She reached for something and You told her, people like you shouldn't drive cars like this, the presiding officer interrupted. Can you explain that statement? Cole hesitated. It was poor phrasing. Renee rose immediately. Poor phrasing or prejudice? Cole's lawyer objected. Relevance sustained, the presiding officer said, though his gaze lingered. Renee sat, calm but coiled. When it was Aisha's turn, the air shifted. The cameras re-angled, microphones extended forward. She stood, every movement measured. My name is Aisha Daniels, she began. On March 14th, I was pulled over without cause, searched without consent, and humiliated in public view. Officer Cole's words were not a mistake. They were evidence, Cole's lawyer stood. Evidence of what, Ms. Daniels? Of a pattern, she said, voice steady. A pattern this department documented, denied, and buried. A murmur rippled through the room. Renee handed her a folder. Exhibit C, she said. Inside were photocopies of internal memos, prior complaints against Cole, redacted but unmistakable, each stamped resolved with Chief Lowell's signature beneath. The presiding officer scanned the first page. "Where did this come from?" Renee answered. "A public records request filed 2 years ago, denied under privacy exemptions. It was later leaked." Cole's lawyer's face drained of color. "Objection. Overruled," the officer said. "Proceed," Aisha continued, voice even, eyes on the panel. "This isn't about one night. It's about how many nights came before it. How many people walked away silenced because the paperwork said resolved. How easily a system forgives itself." For the first time, Cole looked at her directly. "You think you're better than me because of who your father is?" "No," she said. "I think I'm safer because you didn't kill me." The room froze. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Cole's lawyer whispered frantically, "Don't answer that." But it was too late. The silence had already judged him. The presiding officer called for order, but none came. The tension was no longer legal. It was moral. After several minutes, the room settled enough to continue. Renee spoke last. "This department says it values accountability," she said. "Accountability is not suspension. It's exposure. It's consequence. You cannot repair what you refuse to name." She sat down. Outside the glass, protesters filled the plaza again. Signs raised, chants echoing through the marble halls. No more silence. No more spin. Inside, the presiding officer cleared his throat. "We'll take a brief recess." The officials filed out. Reporters surged forward. Cole slumped in his chair, staring at his hands. "They're gonna ruin me," he muttered. Grant appeared near the back, summoned as a witness. He looked at Cole, then at Aisha, then at the floor. When the recess ended, the presiding officer returned. His voice was tight, controlled. "Given the evidence presented, this board recommends immediate suspension pending a full federal review." The words landed heavy, final. Cole closed his eyes. His lawyer whispered something that sounded like appeal, but the sound drowned under applause from the gallery. Not joy, just release. As the room emptied, Aisha stood motionless. The decision didn't feel like victory. It felt like an autopsy, of a system dissecting itself only after being caught. Leonard met her at the door. "You did what you came to do," she shook her head. "No, I showed what they tried to hide." "That's not the same." They stepped outside into the noise, reporters shouting questions, protesters chanting her name. She didn't answer. The sky was gray, but the air felt lighter. Somewhere behind her, Cole was escorted out a side door, head lowered, the sound of his boots swallowed by chants he couldn't silence. And for the first time since that night, Aisha let herself breathe. The story broke at dawn. Every local station ran the same footage. Officer Derek Cole's disciplinary hearing, Aisha's testimony, the leaked internal memos. A news anchor's voice hovered over the images. A growing scandal inside the Westbridge Police Department raises questions about systemic cover-ups. By 9 a.m., national outlets had picked it up. In the Daniels household, the television was on mute. Aisha stood by the window, watching the reflection of her own face in the glass more than the city beyond it. She hadn't slept. Her phone pulsed with messages and reporters, colleagues, strangers calling her brave. Leonard entered the room quietly. "They're spinning it already," he said, holding his phone out. Chief Lowell called it an unfortunate administrative lapse. Aisha turned from the window. "He's calling it paperwork. He's trying to keep his pension." She gave a short, hollow laugh. "They always are." He placed the phone on the table. "The mayor's office just scheduled a press conference for noon. They'll pretend this was all proactive." Aisha didn't respond. Her eyes were on the muted TV, a still frame of her face mid-testimony. "Do you regret doing it publicly?" Leonard asked. She exhaled slowly. "No. I regret that it had to be public to matter." Outside, car horns bled into the hum of morning traffic. The world was moving again, but slower, as if the city itself had been forced to look at its own reflection. Across town, Cole sat on his couch, the blinds drawn. The TV glowed blue in the dim light. His phone was dead from calls he didn't answer. The department statement was already online. "Officer Cole is on indefinite leave pending federal investigation." He stared at it until the words blurred. A soft knock came at the door. He didn't move. Another knock, louder. Derek, open up. It's Grant. Cole opened the door halfway. Grant looked uncomfortable, still in uniform. They're saying there's going to be a federal inquiry, Grant said quietly. They're looking through everyone's reports now. Old cases, too. Cole's voice cracked. You think they'll find something? Grant didn't answer right away. They'll find what they always find when someone finally looks. Cole closed the door. By midday, the press conference began. The mayor stood before a line of flags flanked by Chief Lowell. Their tone was rehearsed. Concern without responsibility. We are committed to transparency, the mayor said. This is not who we are. The words echoed through televisions and live streams across the city. Aisha watched from her office. Reporters' microphones jutted forward like weapons. Someone asked about Lowell's signature on the redacted memos. The mayor hesitated. We're conducting an internal audit. Renee leaned over Aisha's desk. Translation, they're panicking. Aisha nodded. It's the only time they tell the truth, and by accident. Moments later, her office door buzzed. A courier handed her a sealed envelope marked U.S. Department of Justice. Inside, a notice of federal review and a subpoena list. Cole, Lowell, 2 other officers, 1 city administrator. The machine had finally moved. That evening, as dusk fell, Aisha sat on her balcony. The city lights blinked on, one window at a time like cautious witnesses. Her phone rang again, a number she didn't recognize. She answered anyway. Ms. Daniels, a voice said. This is reporter Evan Lee with the Tribune. We've obtained an email chain between Chief Lowell and city officials. It references the containment of prior complaints. Would you be willing to comment? Aisha's hand tightened around the phone. Containment, she repeated. That's what they called it? Yes, ma'am, she closed her eyes. I have no comment. Print it. When she hung up, she felt the first tremor of something deeper than anger. The kind of grief that comes when truth finally surfaces, heavy and undeniable. By midnight, the city's news feeds had turned into a wildfire. Screens replayed Aisha's calm voice under headlines she never asked for. Local officer under federal investigation. Cover-up. Claims rock Westbridge police. Woman who spoke out is judge's daughter. The label followed her now. Judge's daughter. Not lawyer, not citizen, not survivor. A title made to explain why her voice had been heard at all. Leonard called once more. You know they'll turn on you next, he warned. They always do. I know, she said quietly. But I won't be silent again. He paused. They'll dig, Aisha, personal, professional, everything. Then let them. Maybe this time they'll finally find themselves. The next morning, Cole's photo appeared on every major outlet. Face blurred. Badge number not Chief Lowell resigned before noon. Grant, summoned by Internal Affairs, gave a short statement. We all saw it. We just didn't stop it. And by dusk, Aisha walked into her office to find a single note on her desk, unsigned. They'll try to make you the story. Don't let them. You already changed it. She folded the note, slipped it into her pocket, and turned off the light. Outside, a protest moved through the streets, quiet but steady, candlelight flickering against the rain. Her reflection passed across the dark window, tired, unbowed, unafraid. The system had cracked. Tomorrow would decide whether it broke. Rain fell the morning the federal hearing began. Not a storm, just a quiet, relentless drizzle that slicked the courthouse steps. The city had grown used to cameras now. They lined the entrance like a second set of walls. Inside, the air was heavy with a bureaucratic stillness. Rows of press, lawyers, and officials waited under the fluorescent light. The seal of the Department of Justice loomed above the dais, a symbol of authority that had too often looked the other way. Aisha sat in the second row beside Renee. Her father had recused himself. He sat several seats back, expression carved in restraint. He would not speak. Not today. Derek Cole entered escorted by federal marshals. No suit this time. Just a plain gray shirt and the hollow look of a man cornered by his own pattern. Cameras clicked and he flinched at each flash. The lead investigator, a woman in her 50s with a voice like tempered glass, began. Officer Derek Cole, you stand under review for civil rights violations, falsified reporting, and obstruction of justice. We have reviewed prior internal complaints and corresponding memos from the Westbridge Police Department. The room was silent. Only the rain against the windows punctuated her words. Cole shifted. I was following protocol. I made mistakes, but I wasn't. She cut him off. You wrote in your report that Ms. Daniels was uncooperative and verbally aggressive. Body cam footage shows her compliant. Explain the discrepancy, he froze. His throat bobbed once. I misremembered, he muttered. Renee leaned toward Aisha. There it is. The first crack, the investigator continued, tone clinical but cutting. Your misremembering appears in 4 prior cases, Officer Cole. Always black motorists, always the same phrasing. Cole's face paled. Those reports were cleared by my supervisors. Yes, she said. We'll address that next. Chief Lowell was called forward. His resignation hadn't insulated him. The man looked older, thinner, like the paper trail had finally caught up with his spine. Chief Lowell, the investigator began, did you sign these resolutions personally? He hesitated. Administrative oversight is complex. I relied on my staff. Your signature is here, he blinked. Then I trusted my officer's integrity. The investigator raised an eyebrow. Integrity or convenience? Lowell's lawyer objected, but the sound was perfunctory. The truth was already out. Renee whispered, He's unraveling. Watch. The chief's composure cracked under the weight of his own voice. You don't understand. This city doesn't want disorder. You punish a good cop and you lose public trust. The investigator leaned forward. So you concealed misconduct to preserve the illusion of safety? He didn't answer. The silence that followed was louder than any confession. By afternoon, testimony ended. The panel recessed for deliberation. The room emptied into corridors humming with news feeds and whispered statements. Aisha stood near a marble column, watching raindrops trace the glass outside. Her reflection looked back. Older, maybe stronger, but weary. Grant approached, hat in his hands. They're going to fire him, he said. Maybe charge him. She didn't turn. And you? I gave them everything I had. Records, statements. Maybe that counts for something. It does, she said. But it's late. He nodded once. Late's better than never. As he walked away, she finally turned to face her father. You stayed silent, she said. Leonard's jaw tightened. I had to. Any comment from me would have tainted the review. Maybe, she said, but silence sounds the same as approval from far enough away. He looked at her. No defense left, only pride hidden under fatigue. You didn't need me. That's what matters. Her eyes softened. I shouldn't have had to do this alone. Neither spoke again. The panel returned near dusk. Cameras flickered back on. The investigator read the conclusion in a flat, unwavering voice. Officer Derek Cole is found in violation of departmental conduct and federal civil rights statutes. His certification is revoked effective immediately. Chief Lowell is referred for criminal investigation for obstruction and falsification of public records. Reporters surged forward. The words filled the air like electricity. Cole's lawyer whispered urgently, We'll appeal. But it sounded hollow, procedural. Cole stood motionless, rainwater dripping from his cuffs. His gaze found Aisha across the room. There was no hatred now, only the stunned, quiet realization of consequence. She met his eyes once, steady. Then she looked away. Outside, the courthouse steps overflowed with people, reporters, protesters, ordinary citizens holding candles against the drizzle. Some cheered, some cried, most just watched. Renee stepped beside Aisha. You got your justice. Aisha shook her head. No, just proof that it existed. What will you do now? Keep working. Maybe next time it won't take headlines. The cameras found her again, flashbulbs cutting the gray air. A reporter shouted her name, another asked about her father. Another about forgiveness. She said nothing. The rain thickened, washing the marble steps clean. She descended slowly, passing the crowd, until she reached the bottom where the candles glowed like quiet constellations. She paused there, a lone figure amid light and water. Leonard joined her, umbrella in hand. It's over, he said. No, she replied. It just started without lies this time. He nodded as they walked away. Chance rose behind them, not angry but resolute. The city's pulse shifting. That night, Aisha sat at her desk again. No cameras, no statements, just silence. She opened a blank document, typed one line, and stopped. Systems don't change when people get punished. They change when people stop pretending they can't see. She saved it, closed the laptop, looked out at the wet streets below. The reflection that stared back wasn't the same woman from that night under flashing lights. She was still angry, still scarred, but she was free of disbelief. The system had looked away for years. This time it had to look back. A year later, the courthouse steps were quiet. The marble still carried faint stains from the rain that day, but most people had forgotten. News cycles moved, politicians pivoted, and the city folded its outrage neatly into archives. Aisha Daniels hadn't forgotten. She stood at the same spot that had once swarmed with cameras and shouts, now deserted except for the echo of traffic. The plaque near the entrance gleamed with a new inscription, for those who demanded accountability. She wondered who had approved the wording. It sounded ceremonial, not sincere. Her phone buzzed. A message from Renee. Congrats on the panel appointment. Aisha typed back, still deciding if I'll accept. Renee replied instantly, you earned it. Don't let hesitation masquerade as humility. Aisha smiled faintly, then slipped the phone away. She had become a civil rights consultant, working with federal review boards, the kind of work her father once dismissed as too political. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Leonard was retired now, slower, more reflective. He had started writing essays about systemic reform, unsigned, published under pseudonyms. The same judge who'd spent decades avoiding controversy now chronicled it quietly, penance by proxy. They spoke every Sunday. They still disagreed, but the silence between them had softened. Derek Cole lived 3 states away. The last anyone heard, he worked private security for a shipping company. No badge, no authority, just a uniform without power. His name surfaced occasionally in online comment threads. Arguments about cancel culture, false accusations, good cops ruined by politics. But the federal report remained public record. Every Google search told the truth he couldn't outrun. He'd tried to apologize once. A typed letter, short, awkward. It arrived months too late. Aisha read it once, folded it, and placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness wasn't the issue. Oblivion was the city of Westbridge had changed, or at least pretended to. The police department launched community accountability initiatives. The mayor hosted diversity panels. Billboards declared justice means listening, but under the slogans, patterns persisted, smaller, quieter, harder to prove. Racism learned to lower its voice. Aisha's office overlooked City Hall. The same plaza where crowds once chanted her name now hosted summer fairs and ribbon cuttings. She watched from the window as people passed through, unaware of the ghosts beneath the pavement. Renee knocked once before entering. You're avoiding the cameras again, she said. I'm avoiding repetition. Renee dropped a folder on the desk. Federal Oversight Report. Lowell's facing sentencing next month. Aisha didn't reach for it. He'll plea out. They always do. Maybe. But this time he's not walking away with a pension. That's something, Aisha said, though her tone lacked conviction. Renee studied her. You know most people wouldn't have made it this far without breaking. Aisha leaned back, gaze fixed on the rain-streaked glass. Most people don't have to watch the same fight repeat itself with new vocabulary. Then why keep doing it? Aisha looked at her finally. Because I remember what silence costs. Renee nodded. Then take the panel seat. You can write policy instead of testimonies. Aisha said nothing for a long time. The city outside blurred, headlights like restless ghosts. Later that evening, she drove home through the same intersection where it all began. The streetlight flickered above the corner, casting pale light on the asphalt. She slowed, instinctively checking her rearview mirror. No flashing lights. No patrol car. Just quiet, she pulled over anyway. Turned off the engine. Sat there. For a long time, she just listened. To the hum of the city. The faint buzz of the street lamp. The rhythmic tap of rain on glass. She remembered the sound of his voice that night. People like you shouldn't drive cars like this. The words had aged. But they hadn't disappeared, she whispered back to no one. People like me built the roads you're still driving on. Then she started the engine again. Days later, the official announcement came. Aisha Daniels appointed to the National Police Accountability Commission. The photo in the paper showed her standing behind a podium, expression composed, eyes forward. The caption read, "From victim to reformer." She hated the word victim. She hadn't survived to be rebranded. That evening she called her father. "I saw the news," Leonard said. "You did it. I'm not celebrating." He chuckled softly. "You never do. Do you think it'll matter?" She asked. "Not immediately," he said, "but permanence is built one discomfort at a time." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like something I'd say. I learned it from watching you." For once, neither felt the need to fill the silence that followed. Weeks later, she sat before the commission for the first time, not as witness, not as target, but as authority. The irony was clean, almost poetic. A young officer spoke nervously about procedural reform. Across the table, a bureaucrat argued that systemic perception was the problem, not the system itself. Aisha interrupted him, voice level but firm. "Perception doesn't choke people on sidewalks. Policies do." The room went quiet. That silence, heavy, honest, undeniable, was the sound she'd been fighting to hear for years. That night, she returned home late, poured tea, and stood by her window again. The city was alive, restless, unhealed, but not blind anymore. On her desk sat a stack of letters from strangers. Some thanked her. Some confessed fear. Some asked how to begin again. She didn't answer them all. She didn't need to. She understood now. Justice wasn't a conclusion. It was a maintenance plan, the kind that demanded more than outrage. The kind that outlived headlines. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the skyline. Rain began again. Slow, steady, cleansing. She watched the water slide down the glass, tracing invisible patterns, erasing old dust. And for the first time since that night, she didn't feel haunted, just aware. When she finally turned off the light, the room went dark except for the reflection in the window. A woman no longer defined by what was done to her, but by what she refused to forget.